Welcome to today's webinar. Hello everyone, I'm Matt Knutson, Senior Product Marketing Manager at MHC, and I'm really excited to cover today's webinar with two esteemed experts. I'll introduce them here in just a second. Today's topic is how modern manufacturers turn accounts payable into revenue, where you can transform accounts payable from a cost center into a revenue engine. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded. We will share that to all participants, all registrants, and we will also open up Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions during the webinar, we'd be happy to address those. The experts for today's webinar are Kevin Monroe, Senior Director, Partner Sales at Bottomline, and Blaine Sanderson, Senior Product Manager at MHC. Kevin, can you just take a minute and briefly introduce yourself to today's attendees?
Of course. Thanks, Matt. So Kevin Monroe, I'm with Bottomline. As Matt mentioned, I've been here now for a little over 13 years. All those years have been tied to the product Paymode, which is the product we partnered with MHC on about a year ago. Current role is Senior Director of Partner Sales, so I provide sales support for MHC and all their current and future customers. Pleasure to be a part of the discussion today, and kick it over to Blaine.
Yeah, you bet. Blaine Sanderson, and I've been with MHC for about 3 years. I'm located in Colorado. I've lived and breathed procure to pay for a number of years, and in fact, fun fact, I actually worked with Kevin and colleagues at Bottomline before coming over to MHC. Back to you, Matt.
Great, thanks Blaine, thanks Kevin. So really excited today. What you'll really discover is a few different things. As you can see here, 3 core areas. Revenue generation strategy, so you can see specifically how you can earn rebates through your supplier payments and really understand more specifically about the Payments Plus program, the partnership that we have with Bottomline, and you'll really find that it does deliver a very comprehensive security framework. You can see some amazing metrics a little bit later, but more than 500 billion in processed payments and over 300 different verification points. So it's not only incredibly secure, but it's built for scale. And they have a number of, and Kevin will cover this, a number of vendors that are already loaded into their systems that really expedite that process. From an operational efficiency gain, this is really a key part, is this, and Blaine will get into this a little bit more, but just the whole goal is to eliminate a lot of those manual bank account updates and really help streamline the overall process. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Kevin, who will step through a bit more about Payments Plus.
Great, thanks, Matt, and thanks for setting the table there. I think for today's discussion, kind of going to hit upon some of the challenges that I know I've heard in my history at Bottomline, which, as I said, is well over a decade here. Speak to a lot of different customers, a lot in the manufacturing space, and usually in those discussions, the number 1, 2, and 3 things I hear is, 1, I want to transform AP. I just can't do it because I am either short-staffed or there's other priorities. But I'd love to move away from things like paper checks and things that I'm sending to my suppliers. Also heard that some of the processes are incredibly inefficient. That AP is doing all they can to try to make sure that supplier payments are paid on time, that are paid accurately, the dollars and the data are getting to the intended party with no issue. But they just can't go and do it alone. And they've been looking for technologies that could potentially help them with that. And try to transform them from being a very paper-based shop to an electronic shop. Easier said than done. That's been the case for decades. Companies have been saying that, particularly in manufacturing. 40% of payments to suppliers across the U.S. are still being made via paper check. So a lot of folks are trying to move away from electronic. They just don't have the strategy or even maybe the scale and resources to do so. We've heard that across the board. We've also heard that obviously fraud is a big deal. I think with AI and just the way fraudsters and bad actors are getting a little more creative in how they're trying to trick you into paying the wrong person, we have to defend against that. And and especially in manufacturing, you guys have a lot to do, especially in the back office as well. And being a licensed fraud fighter is usually not part of the job description. So looking for a way to have somebody or some company or some technology offload that has been something that I usually hear in the room when talking to a manufacturing company. Mitigating fraud is great. Efficiencies are great. Going to electronic is great. All three of those things we'll talk about how we solve for. But if we're able to do all three of those things, all the while driving rebates back or cash back on your supplier payments and turning a strong ROI to actually a process that you're looking to implement, that's going to help you and your organization get that project approved, get the green light potentially over something else you guys are looking to do over the next 12 months. And we'll talk about some of the ways that this solution can help you, monetize your supplier payments in addition to the three things on the screen. And here's just kind of how we check those three boxes that we mentioned on the prior slide. So Matt did a good job at the opening of this telling about this network. So Paymode is a business-to-business payment network, predominantly in the United States, USD to USD payments. Been around, the network's been around for over 20 years. Bottomline's been around for over 35. The network has grown substantially over the last 5 to 10 years. And we're now up over 600,000 suppliers that we have vetted, ready to be paid electronically, either virtual card or ACH, by the payers and the customers that we bring into our network. This network is grown by us having vendor onboarding services. So we have our in-house vendor sales team. So we're able to call out to suppliers and onboard them on behalf of this network. And that's a really important thing to mention. How we onboard suppliers is on behalf of a network. So yes, we would be calling on your behalf to try to get your suppliers for your program. But when that supplier enrolls for one customer, they enroll for current and future customers as well. So you'll see here, we have about a 47%, nearly 50% of the spend that you're sending out the door today, on average, is already set up in our network of 600,000. So that gives you, to the point we made earlier, a really good jump start and acceleration if you're looking to go from a paper-based world to an electronic-based world in your supplier payments. Using this network that we already have in place to your benefit is a great way to do that. And if you're not just looking to transform paper checks over electronic, but potentially you're doing some traditional or in-house ACH today, chances are you're having to gather, store, maintain all that banking information. There's certainly some fraud risk to that. What if you get the wrong information? What if you take I wouldn't say a shortcut or miss a step in validating that information? There's a risk to that. So we're not just looking at the checks going out the door that we're looking to transform over to our secure method of payment, but we're also looking at other payment types like an in-house that you're doing, in-house ACH you might be doing on your own, that we could take a look at trying to put that into our network to put this kind of blanket of fraud and security around that payment, around that supplier relationship, and again, potentially monetize that payment. So the network not only has a lot of suppliers in it, as Matt mentioned, we process a lot of spend. So if you're looking for what's unique potentially about this solution versus other things potentially you've heard about from other providers, whether it be a bank or otherwise, is our scale. So we're not a small network. We process $500 billion each and every year, and that's fraud-free. That's a big statement to say. And the reason we are fraud-free, we'll talk about in a little bit, we take our security with extreme rigor. And we don't take that lightly. We make sure that we're vetting both payer and supplier. So we are a closed network. It's not like something like a PayPal where you could go create an account tomorrow and pay somebody in an hour. We're doing KYCs on the payer. We're doing verification checks on the vendor, over 300 data point security checks on the supplier constantly. So we're making sure both sides of the equation, payer and vendor, are being vetted, and we know that the dollars on the data are being passed fraud-free into its intended party. So with all that, using the network to your advantage to accelerate the transformation, we're doing some efficiencies as well. So if you're looking to clean up some of the processes and maybe be more efficient in your time and get supplier payments out the door quicker and more accurate, this is something the solution will check the box for. Now, the next two slides will be an example of a real-life customer that we took a look at this discussion with, and they came to us and said, you know what, I want a better way to pay suppliers. Let's take a look at MHC Payments Plus, and what can you do for me, essentially. So when we're having those discussions, the request or the ask of the customers, we say, okay, send us your last 12 months of trailing AP spend. And what we're going to do is we'll take a look at that file, and we do a pretty comprehensive analysis about who would be a good fit for a payment type that you can monetize and secure. And in this case, there's two payment types we're looking to monetize and secure. So for one, it would be a virtual credit card. Some of you are probably aware of what a virtual credit card is. You might even have a program in place today, but a virtual card is a one-time single-use credit card that is funded for a single dollar amount that cannot be run for more or for less of that dollar amount. So if you have $1 million worth of invoices you're paying on a card, they can't run it for $1,000,001, so it would reject. So it's a very there's some rigor and controls around that method, so it does create a little bit more security, but also it creates a rebate stream. So in that instance, your supplier would be paying a fee to receive that payment at interchange. That fee is determined by whatever agreement they have with their merchant processor. It could be anywhere from 2 to 3% on average, 2.6, let's call it. So if your supplier is paying a percentage of the payment that they're receiving, that creates a rebate stream, which in turn creates a revenue stream back to you as the issuing payer. So that's one payment type. That's not new. Virtual cards have been around forever. A secondary payment type that we have in the MHC Payments Plus offering, which is unique potentially to something you've heard before, is we actually could drive rebates on your ACH payments. So we have at Paymode a proprietary payment type we call Premium ACH, and that cost of a payment to the supplier is about half of what a credit card might be. So it starts at about 1.5%, and we have the ability to flex that fee down if we have to. That creates a lot more enrollments potentially. If you have a supplier that might not want to accept the 3% credit card fee, 1.5% still might be a little too rich for their blood. Potentially you lower that down to something like 1.1, 1.3, something where it's at a cost point where they see value in the service we're providing along with that premium payment. But again, it's another way for you to get a revenue share back to your organization for making an electronic payment. In that ACH option as well, just to touch on the security, with that, we are gathering, storing, and maintaining all the banking information of your supplier. So again, if you're doing traditional ACH today, you're having to take that effort on your own. You're probably getting an ACH form. You might be using a portal. You're having to gather information and do some sort of validation to make sure it belongs to the intended vendor. But we would be doing all that for you. So once they enroll, we do a series of checks, whether it be getting bank validation forms, doing some checks for, say, Plaid, doing the technology checks we do, validating that vendor to be sure that they are who they say they are. So by the time we have onboarded and activated that vendor for you, you can sleep soundly saying, I know that is a secure vendor. I can pay to this service. So those are the two payment types. Just want to set the table there. So when we looked at this spend analysis, this is the last 12 months for a customer is the top line. So you can see in this organization was about $150 million of AP spend. That translates roughly to about $400 million of revenue company on average. This is what a spend to revenue ratio might be. We then would go through and take out anyone that doesn't make sense for this program. So that would be individuals because we're talking about B2B payments, not B2C. That might be foreign payments, so anything outside of the U.S. because, again, we're doing USD to USD. Internal spend, so we're not going to charge yourself a fee, right? Typically banks we would exclude from something like this. So we have some categories. Government would be another one, so cities, states, etc., that just aren't a good fit for a fee-based payment type or paying to get paid. So after we've taken those out, what you see highlighted in orange here, these are the suppliers, transactions, spend that we did feel was a good fit for, in this case, reaching out to or targeting for a virtual credit card or a premium ACH. We then took those numbers and matched them up against our network of 600,000 suppliers, as we mentioned, and highlighted in gray below are two types of matches in our network. One is an open acceptor, and what an open acceptor is just like it sounds. To the concept I mentioned before, where we enroll for a network, these are suppliers that have enrolled for current customers in our network, are being transacted to by other customers, not you. And when you join the network, you are able to then be added to their payment agreement within our network, so you could pay them on, say, a virtual credit card or a premium ACH if that's how they're signed up and dispositioned in our network. Big benefit, again, to you is we're driving quick adoption to move away from in-house payment processes to these methods where there's more security and monetization capability. So we won't have to really enable them. If you were looking at a solution outside of this solution, you might have to have that company go out and one-to-one enable a vendor, and that could take time. This is something where you get an immediate jump start to your program. So an open acceptor. Then we have a selective acceptor. So again, kind of like it sounds, these are suppliers that take a virtual credit card or premium ACH in our network, but the way they set up their membership, instead of just accepting openly for any new customer, they prefer that we would reach out and get their acceptance every time, say, you or a new customer joins the network. As you can imagine, we have a pretty good conversion rate with these types of matches because they are getting this type of payment for others. So this again shows you the power of the network. As you can see the matches below, we're above 50% for all three of those metrics. So if you again think about what would a program like this mean to me and the impact, there's nearly 400 vendors in this case that we feel pretty good about converting. We'll get a lot of those, and that's a big chunk of the suppliers that in this case this customer was already paying today. I'll dive in a bit deeper to where we start really talking about the methodology and how we drive the rebates. So if you see here in the bottom right, in this instance, again, it was a $150 million AP company. We're projecting that we can deliver over $170,000 of annual rebate to this customer. So just think about that too. If you have a management and they are saying, why should we do a project like this? And I'm sure forever, because the stat showed it before, you've been trying to lobby for, hey, we should do some efficiencies in AP. We need to do something. And I'm assuming a lot of times you hear, well, this project isn't as important as this project, and yada, yada. If you have now the horsepower, the backing of saying, well, this will drive an ROI of nearly $200,000 just to make payments, and we're going to get all these efficiency gains and put some more, reduce and mitigate our fraud, that's very compelling. That's easier for you to take something like this forward. And that's what we've seen historically with customers with MHC that have adopted this. But in the top right-hand corner, you'll see virtual card. And again, that open acceptor concept. In this case, you can see there was over $11 million of spend, a couple hundred vendors that we could turn on right away. That alone will drive over $100,000 of rebate just from those open acceptors. So very compelling, hundreds of vendors, millions of dollars to spend right away. Then we'll go in campaign. So again, we have a team in-house of hundreds that will do the campaigning on your behalf. We don't outsource to a third party. They are Paymode employees. We'll do the level calls, emails, walk a vendor through enrollment if they need it. Explain the benefits, the fees, et cetera, what they're getting for the value. And we think we can pick up some adoption there. And again, in this case, we can drive almost $15 million on a card. So that's $15 million that otherwise you wouldn't be monetizing. It would be costing you money that we can deliver to you. And again, we don't stop there. So if you're talking to, a bank or another type of organization, they'll probably talk to you about virtual card. And if they don't get a virtual card, it's mostly an ACH they'll default to without a rebate component to it. In this case, we have that secondary payment type, which can drive a rebate back to you, all the while, again, give you all those efficiencies and security benefits that we talked about that we're doing to do all the validations and onboarding for you. Again, same thing in this case. We have open acceptors for this payment method. You'll pick up millions of dollars again on monetization right away. Nearly 100 vendors that you can get onto the open acceptor here. We'll do the campaigning for this specific payment type. We'll also catch anyone that says no to a virtual card. So anyone that says, again, 2 or 3% might not make sense, we're going to take a shot at another electronic option with a fee, but albeit lower, and we'll try to get some enrollments there. And you can see here we're picking up a significant amount of spend in vendors on this payment type. So with the two payment types, not the one, you're going to drive more adoption for electronic payments. With using the network, you're going to drive quicker ROI and quicker transformation. And then 3, you're really going to have that rebate component back to you, which call it the cherry on top, call it what you want to call it, but those things together really make this, and have made, to a lot of MHC customers, a very compelling proposition. Next slide. And last thing I'll touch on, and I know we've hit it a few times here, is the security. Won't go through all this, but I kind of hit on some of the things we do. Not going to give away our IP about how we do our security because it is something that we've worked hard on to develop over the many years of doing it. But there is over 300 verification points we're doing. We're doing nightly OFAC checks to make sure that you're not paying bad guys or people you shouldn't. We're doing MFA checks. We're doing fingerprinting of devices. We're checking anomalous login behavior. Obviously, if they're logging in New Hampshire, where I sit, on a Tuesday, and then a Tuesday afternoon, they're 200, 300, 10,000 miles away, in an hour, that's going to not make a whole lot of sense. So we're going to flag that. We're going to not let payments go through until we can do some proper validation. So we're doing all this. We have a whole team all day, every day. This is all they do. So the way I would position it to you, and I have to other customers, if I told you I would give you hundreds of people to reach out to your vendors, I would give you 40 to 50 people to do some validations and security to make sure your payments are going to the right place, would that be of value to your business? Answer is a resounding yes almost every time. That's something where we give you the resources, the technology, and the scalability to really get to the level of AP you've been trying to get to likely on your own. And that I think altogether would make a conversation worthwhile, hopefully following after this webinar. And I'll kick it over to you, Blaine, to take over.
All right. Thank you, Matt. And thank you, Kevin. So let's just say that the opportunity report looks compelling to you and you're ready to make the next step. What does this look like after you've agreed to sign up? Well, I have to tell you that it's very easy to assimilate Payments Plus into your existing operation. If you're not a NorthStar customer, can you create a file? Can you create a payment batch? Really, that's all that's necessary. If you are already an MHC NorthStar customer, you're in a great position, literally weeks away from being able to realize the value of the payments you're already making, to be able to turn these into rebates. Let's kind of see how it works. All right, so again, after sign up, as Kevin talked about, this process of bringing vendors for evaluation will work a lot like it did when you generated the initial opportunity. You'll submit the vendors seamlessly through Payments Plus for the network match process. Of course, as Kevin mentioned, and unlike bank programs, there's immediate day one acceptance at rates that average around 40%. As these matched vendors are discovered, they'll be visible immediately in the NorthStar Payments portal. And at that point, you're ready to make payments from the ERP. And like I said, you just do this as normal. We want to make sure that we design the solution in a way that causes minimal process disruption. And so again, you just create your check or ACH payments the way you normally would in the ERP, and we'll handle the disambiguation, being able to check which vendors are in the network and direct the streams successfully. Along the way, you're going to see that we have enhanced payment status visibility and payment control. Not only that, but settlement reconciliation to the ERP, along with monthly rebates and reporting. So let's dive in a little bit to this. Okay, like I say, as soon as we're able to see that a vendor is a day one acceptor, that within days, most of the vendors that are in that spend file that are candidates are going to be appearing in the portal. And at this point, we're able to immediately start making payments against these vendors. So you'll create your payment batch, create your payment file. We'll evaluate against the networks that are already in the network. And of course, if they're not already in the network, those payments run through to your legacy streams, right? So we have, again, a complete, immediate, and sustained visibility into the vendors in the network. All right, here we can see the initial start point for making payments in Payments Plus. After the payment batch has been received from the ERP, you're able to automatically or manually initiate payments. And again, this allows them to be sent into the Paymode network, and then we'll start seeing some immediate status benefit. So of course, as payments are received for vendors that are in the network, we're going to see all of the tracking that you'd expect to find in a comprehensive payment solution. Has it been funded? Has the card been issued? Is there any return or stop payment status? Along the way, you have complete control to request a stop payment, whether it's prior to funding or even after funding. Often these can be honored and you'll get notification that the payment has been stopped. So you're in complete control of that process, again, from a familiar interface if you're already utilizing NorthStar. Now, what's exciting is not only are we seeing payment status come back to you, but the vendors have a great benefit here as well. As payments are made and come to successful resolution, there's a lot of value here. First of all, they're being made faster. So your vendors are going to get faster payments. They're also getting remittance flexibility, right? So whether they want to use the EDI or what we would call the CTX format, a custom AR format, they choose which format of remittance works best for them. And of course, if they're working with multiple payers, they have an economy of scale there, right? If they're making any account changes, economy of scale, right? You're not having to service those requests. Also, they have self-service visibility as well. So you're not going to get as many calls about where's this payment. They can do their cash forecasting and be able to be in control of their own destiny, especially as they're working with multiple payers throughout the relationship. As the payments come into successful resolution, then we also receive the settlement data for those payments, and we're able to automatically reconcile that back to your ERP. We also make this available for ad hoc analysis if you want to look at a day's invoices or payments outstanding metric. So you can see here, we're able to provide both you as the customer value, and of course the rebates are a big part of that, but also value to your vendors, keeping happy vendor-supplier relationships intact and in a good position. If we want to look at having you guys come on in and look at your potential rebates, again, it's as easy as generating that 12-month spend history, and we can help you do that. So basically, we just need to know how much you've spent with your vendors over a 12-month period. And then again, we can turn around that into an opportunity report like Kevin showed and see if this is a right fit for you. So you can contact us at the phone number here or at info@mhcautomation.com. And again, we can quickly analyze a file that you create, even help you create it, and then look at scheduling an opportunity meeting to see the results of that analysis. All right. If there's any questions, please let us know. You can always contact us at info@mhcautomation.com. Matt, back to you.
Great, thanks Blaine. Thanks Kevin. Looks like we have a couple of questions here. First one is, we already have a card program, so why would adding Payments Plus card features be of use to our organizations, and how exactly would those two programs work together?
Yeah, I can take that, Matt. So, yeah, it's not uncommon that an organization I speak to already has some sort of card program in place. It might have been in place for a while. If you have, say, like a P card program, a hard plastic card for like T&E and short expenses, that's different than what we're talking about. But if you do have a virtual card program, say with a bank or somebody else, we typically complement that, not replace it. So, if you're looking at an existing card program, you might have, 5 to 10% adoption of spend on that program. Usually what we see is that, okay, what are you doing the other 90, 95%? Let's look at that. Let's look at how we can further monetize what you're already monetizing and kind of work alongside that program and complementing it. And in most cases, what we find when we run these analysis, I had a recent manufacturing company say, okay, well, I already have, $5 million on my card program. We go, okay, well, send us the rest of the spend. It was about $100 million. We came back to them and we had $12 million that hit in that day one bucket of card above and beyond that $5 million they had already. So we more than 2x the card program they've been working on for years that we already had in that network that we could flip on in days, right? So that is something that is extremely compelling. And then, by the way, we went and approached the remainder outside of existing card, our card, with a premium ACH payment type. So I would say if you want to lift and shift the program from what you're doing, we could obviously look at that as well. But more often than not, they want to keep what's in place. They want to drive more rebates, and that's the conversation we have.
Great, thanks for that, Kevin. Looks like we have another question here. How does being part of the network actually benefit the vendors? Can you help attendees understand really the remittance options and like what kind of visibility would the vendors see as part of this network?
Yeah, so not every vendor is going to say yes, obviously, but many vendors do see it, and Blaine mentioned it before. The many customers paying this way, and the volume play here. So in most cases, we're not talking about one customer getting customer or one supplier getting one customer's payments. On average, it's 1 to 47. We have 47 customers looking to transact or pay that vendor electronically in our network. So it's a one to many, not a one to one. And when we do that, we again introduce scale to the supplier that they can get a payment methodology that has clear, crisp remittance detail. We deliver rich remittance detail, easier for me to say, in a number of different formats, one of which being CTX or EDI transmission. So we can deliver remittance directly to an ERP of a supplier for auto cash posting. For larger suppliers that are more sophisticated, we can do a custom AR file. We can make it to the specs of their ERP to post that payment. For even if you're not in one of those two buckets of automatic feed to the ERP, we're still delivering all the remittance detail to a portal. We're putting in an email, so you know what you're getting paid for. The visibility is there. The auditability and reporting and trackability is there. We keep 7 years historical data within Paymode for the supplier that they can go for audit purposes or close purposes, go back and pull payments for not just maybe your transactions, but all transactions. And that can be done in a matter of seconds and minutes and exported in a format of their choice. So vendors like that versus, say, if they're getting a check, obviously they got to get a paper check, they got to key in information off the remit detail. That's inefficient on their end. If they're getting a traditional in-house ACH, whereas dollars get put in their bank account, and then we have an attachment in an email as the remittance. They got to then find the email. They got to open it. Maybe they don't open it, and then they don't know where the email went. So there's inefficiencies with what is outside of Paymode, but within Paymode, the vendor is paying for a better way to get paid. And that's what we've seen with a lot of our community. And I guess the proof point is all those open acceptors. So those are vendors that have already accepted this way of payment. So that should kind of validate that, yes, there is a strong value in what we're doing.
Great. Thank you for that, Kevin. I want to thank both Kevin and Blaine for today's webinar. Feel free, after this webinar to reach out to the MHC team. You can contact us at info@mhcautomation.com or visit our website. And we just want to thank everyone for your time and attendance today and hope you have a great rest of the day.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Blaine. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.